Hello and welcome to Business Incorporated live on Channels Television. Here's what's coming up on the show. Egypt approves $500 million financing agreement with Abu Dhabi Exports Office. And cocoa prices hit a new record high as the futures rise by as much as 4.8%, reaching $11,839 per ton. Looks like chocolates might get more expensive. Plus, Zambia gets $184 million from the International Monetary Fund after a program review. And it's great to have you join us. I'm Ladi Williams. Let's get a check on the markets now. We see for the metals market, gold, that spot gold is steadied ahead of the Federal Reserve's policy meeting as the market are keenly awaiting the U.S. Central Bank's outlook for cues on interest rate path in 2025. And we see there palladium is unchanged, platinum also unchanged, but spot silver, that's down about 0.2%, $30.47 per ounce. And we have spot gold, $2,655. U.S. gold futures unchanged at $2,672. The Federal Open Markets Committee is due to convene later in the day for its last policy meeting of 2024 and will announce its interest rate decision. And that's sometime today. Markets see a 96.3% chance of a quarter-point rate cut at the meeting, but have only priced in a roughly about 16.5% chance of a similar reduction. That's for January. The Bank of Japan, Bank of England, Riksbank, and Norges Bank are expected to deliver their policy verdicts. That's for December 19. And the European Central Bank is expected to cut rates again next year if inflation settles at its 2% target. Let's get a check on what's playing out with oil market now. We see it's still down for Brent, 0.42%. That's the last trade, $73.59 a barrel. WTI, that's the U.S. grade, 0.62% down at $70.27 a barrel. We also see oil investors also looking out for what's playing out in Asia, worried about Chinese demand, and also looking out for what's going to happen with interest rate cuts in the U.S. So that's playing into both commodities that we track. We're waiting for that markets bracing right now for that U.S. Fed rates decision. And to other matters now, the Honorable Minister of State for Oil, Senator Heineken Lokobiri, has described the decision of Shell Nigeria Exploration and Production Company Limited to invest in Bonga North Deepwater Project in Nigeria. It's an announcement which sends a very positive signal to the world that Nigeria is ready for business. Senator Lokobiri spoke exclusively to Channels Television, also gave hints that the country's production benchmark for 2025, that stands about 2.06 million barrels per day. Take a listen.
It shows to the rest of the world that Nigeria is still, one of the best investment destinations, in Africa. It also translates to a lot more, revenue, for government once, these investments, are consummated. And let me also state that this didn't just come, by accident. It's been a long time of engagement, of stakeholders. This Bonga North investment has 4 IOCs. 4 IOCs, you may know. And all the IOCs, must agree by way of consensus before the investment is made. So if 4 IOCs have agreed, and they say, look, we're making this investment, it's a very, very big milestone. It sends a very positive, message to the rest of the world that Nigeria is now open, for investment. Our target in the next few years is to see how we can do, some 3 to 4 million barrels per day. And I believe that this is one of the steps that are very fundamental. As part of my sustained engagement with Shell, I also know that Shell also has some other investments in the pipeline. I want to use the opportunity to also assure Shell, the other IOCs, that Nigeria will be globally competitive in terms of our environment, our governance structure, our fiscals, in every ramification.
Welcome back. Well, today we're going to dissect Nigeria's soaring inflation rate, reaching a staggering 34.6%. We'll explore how this economic storm is impacting your daily life, from skyrocketing food prices to the crippling effects of a weakening naira. Join us for this conversation. We have Dr. Vincent Oando, is an economist and investment specialist. Great to have you on the show. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yeah, it's great to have you, Dr. Vincent. So, according to the latest data, inflation keeps, eroding spending power in Nigeria. Talk to me about how you're seeing the latest numbers.
Didn't get you clearly.
Yeah, what are you seeing for the latest inflation numbers for November?
All right, thank you. Yeah, the inflation number of released, I think, yesterday or so by the National Bureau of Statistics is putting year-on-year inflation as 34.6%. Up from about 32.8%, about 2.2% growth on monthly basis. Of course, I'm not particularly surprised by this uptick. Historically, we've seen that in a seasonal period like this, inflation numbers always go up because of Nigerians' way of celebration and purchases that they made. But this year is a bit different. We've seen the key drivers of inflation, acting over the last throughout the year, if I may say so. For instance, the food basket or the food inflation is up. That one is even almost 40%, 39.8%, and in some parts of the country, up to 50%, like a state like Sokoto. Other drivers of inflation, such as exchange rate, is also on the high side. During this last quarter, we've seen exchange rate fluctuate between 1,500 naira per dollar and 1,750, almost hitting 1,800 all-time high. So these are the two major drivers of inflation, especially the food inflation. And of course, the challenge is that is it just season now? By January, February 2025, what are we expecting? Looking at the trend, and unfortunately, the inflationary pressure is likely to continue. Because by March or so, some parts of the country will be going into planting season, and generally during planting season, crops are also a bit scarce in the market. So food inflation will continue to be up, and what we're seeing now is part of the alarm we sounded earlier in the year, where about 33% of farmers in Nigeria couldn't go back to their farmland to farm due to the activities of terrorists that have taken over their farmland. Some of them that actually farm very close to the house. We call them garden farm, just for subsistence purpose, because they can't go far, 3 miles, 3 kilometers out away from the town or from the center of the communities. You cannot farm in most of those areas that used to generate the food that we eat in the country. So having said that, we've also seen that food inflation is high, urban inflation is high. The rural inflation, of course, that's about 32.2%. But all in all, it is time for us to tighten our belt and know that until we do something about exchange rate issue and supply of food to the market, and this supply of food is going to be through going back to farm, cropping and plantation, this issue may likely continue because the intervention of the government through some of the palliatives they rolled out, through some of the policies they rolled out, such as removal of subsidies, removal of port duty or custom duty on food items, removal of tax from key products such as energy products and services, pharmaceuticals, gas. We've not seen results or positive outcome from some of these interventions, whether it is because of political.
So much to unpack there for the drivers of this recent inflation. That's for November. But I'm sure what would be on the minds of, investors now would be, what is that hedge? How do you hedge against inflation, currency devaluation, going into 2025? It's a new year, we're going into, and definitely it seems these old problems will still stay. Hello, Dr. Wani. Okay. All right. I think Dr. Wan is frozen there, and definitely that's one of the big questions now. Investors are trying to get answered. What is that hedge? What is that powerful inflation hedge that will help you, keep your portfolio strong, going into 2025? Even though we've seen quite an impressive move from the local stock market, it's still not outperforming, inflation at this time. Talking about the all-share index. But thank you so much, Dr. Vincent Wan is an economist and investment specialist. We'll try and get him on later on at some point when we have a better internet. Thank you so much for coming on. But, talking about the all-share index, let's bring in Will now to bring us up to speed on what's playing out at intraday.
Oh, yeah, Ladi.
Yeah, I don't know if you're beating inflation.
Well, apparently from the color of my shirt, you can tell what the market was doing at the time I checked it.
So inflation is beating you?
No. I'm actually beating inflation.
Oh,
that's personally, I'm beating inflation.
So maybe the colors from the struggle.
Yes, we're just trying to be supportive. It's more like solidarity with the NGX.
Fantastic.
That's what we're doing right now. But basically, let's look at the numbers at intraday. We see the market down from yesterday's bullish close, and that shows kind of like sentiment in the market has been more like profit taking. And it's the week before Christmas, and people will have to, take profit where they can. Especially we see the flour mills, the suspension of the shares by the NGX so they can delist. The process of delisting is ongoing right now, and we'll get the analysts to speak more about that. I want to know what's going on behind the scenes for flour mills and what investors should expect. But let's just dive in now and see how that is going on, Ladia, just to talk about it. Now, so looking at the markets at intraday, major equities zooming in on that. With the markets we track, we see that the NGX was down at the time I took the numbers, 0.11% down, still at 99,000 level. And look at GSE at intraday. It's more like a bloody time for equities in Africa, especially for major equities. You see 1.01% down. And we're just speaking to what's happening with Africa. It seems like investors are carrying on the same sentiment, especially what's happening in the U.S. right now. The U.S. Fed is meeting today, starting their rate decision meeting today to see what they can do about rates tomorrow. Now, let's look at Egypt and see what they did at intraday. It's also down 0.15%, 30,000 levels still hanging on there. And then we see the NSC, that's in Kenya, let's not say in Nigeria, closing Monday's trading in the green. That's the only one for yesterday, but we'll see how they close business today. Well, let's have more conversation about what's happening on the NGX in Nigeria, and we're having this conversation with an expert, Dr. Oladipupo Tijani is the Group Chief Executive. First Icon Group joins us virtually from his office in Abuja. Good afternoon, Dr. Tijani. It's good to have you on the program.
Good afternoon, Will. So, thank you for having me.
Let's just bounce off and kick off with flour mills. I was talking with Ladi about that. And the suspension by the NGX. We did get this news earlier, much earlier, that they were going to delist. It was more like rumors then, but right now it's the trades in their shares have been suspended. Can you tell us what's going on behind the scenes here?
Yes, actually, it's been an interesting times for companies like flour mills. Earlier the year, we saw the information coming into the market around majority shareholder, Excelsior Shipping Company. The current investor, of course, were aware that is holding about 63% stake in flour mills, valued at some over 140 billion as of September. The news filtering into the market was that Excelsior, of course, plans to buy out minority shareholders under an offer over 100 billion. Of course, the initial plan is to delist, although further information also hitting the market is that because of a restructuring plan, the company is intending to return to the market via post-restructuring with a dual listing. Of course, there's also information around further expansion, streamlining the business into three major companies to attract both local and foreign technical and financial partners. The company is also expected to bolster into its more operations by investing over 100 million, over 1 billion US dollar over the next 4 years. But of course, it's also expected that expansion into its sugar business, over 100 million US dollar in cassava processing. Of course, the plan is ultimately to come back to release as a major holding company, something similar to the likes of Dangote. So there are lots of potential benefits we see in that direction for shareholders in the medium term.
I'm just wondering, did they have to delist to release, get back on the NGX? Couldn't they just suspend the shares, do their restructuring? We saw Connell, Insurance do that. They came back as a holding company. They didn't have to delist to come back. So why take this move?
Yeah, so I'll see that the model in this case, this restructuring does not only covers a backward and forward integration. There's also a deliberate restructuring attempt to fuse over 22 segments of the business into just 5 key companies. What that means is that it's going to bundle all of the 22 subsidiaries together. So this delisting will have them. We see them first privatizing the institution and then coming to list as a holding company. So if you take a look at that, you will see that process involves bringing in the different businesses as an holding company, which means that there's an extension to it just being in the food processing company, which had hitherto been listed.
Okay, so that's fantastic. We'll wait to see how that pans out for flour mills and for investors. I'm sure they're waiting with bated breath to see how that will impact their, revenue. So looking at more action in the market, Oando released their unaudited Q3 numbers yesterday. For you, Dr. Tijani, was it good or disappointing for investors?
Looks like a fantastic closure for investors in Oando. If you see, year to date, the stocks, even though it closed yesterday at about 73 naira, year to date has done close to 600%. In fact, specifically about 594% of the close of business, hinging up to as high as 95 naira, 95 naira 50 kobo. Specifically, even though we might say that in terms of expectation, there seems to be a marginal differential as to what investors are expecting. Of course, the revenues inched above 1 trillion. That's on 15%. If you look at it year on year from the last period last year. A further look, you see that the gross profits also grew marginally by some 9%. Other operating income by some 40%. By and large, you will see that the consolidation of his acquisition of ConocoPhillips about 10 years ago, and then of course his acquisition of Ajip Nigeria as at August 22nd this year, you will see that it's beginning to gather some momentum. Of course, his profit before tax also inched up to 28 billion. We're expected to see earnings per share, of course, closing on a positive note compared to what the same period last year. So it's a very interesting period for investors in the Oando PLC.
Fantastic news. So let's look at their EPS now. We said that it's standing at, is it 1 naira, 1 kobo? That's from 0. So looking at it now, does that tell the trajectory for investors in terms of will they start getting dividend from the company anytime soon?
Yeah, so there's a likelihood they will start, investors will get dividend anytime soon. And also for investors looking to medium and long term, it will be a very interesting investment avenue because like I mentioned earlier, the institution is just trying to beginning to consolidate its post-acquisition gains out of ConocoPhillips as well as Ajib. So in the immediate term, we can look to see dividends coming out of that company anytime soon.
Definitely, Oando is holding their AGM to their annual general meeting today. We'll see the resolutions that come out from that meeting, and we'll probably talk about that later on. Let's move now to the auctions. We saw yesterday the last bond auction for December. That's from the DMO, the Debt Management Office, took place, and we saw the result. But it shows lower borrowing when compared to November, where we saw over 300 billion naira, allotment given to market participants. Now, speaking from that, bouncing off from that, what are the expectations, especially with the fact that the budget, which is about 47.9 trillion, is going to be presented tomorrow at the National Assembly? What do you see this with deficits at standing about 13 trillion? And the Minister of Finance is saying that the deficits will be funded through borrowings. How does that play into this? Where do you see, with the sentiment now that they're slowing down on borrowing, where do you see the picture for the DMO in terms of their calendar? How would it play for the borrowings? Is it domestic borrowing? Is it going to be foreign borrowings? And also, in terms of fiscal sustainability, how do you see the government managing the debt versus revenue here?
Yes, of course. The DMO's bond auction offered 120 billion for both 2029 and 2021. Again, an interesting time for in the fixing market. We saw the 2031 held steady at 20-22%, while the 2029 bond printed higher by 14 basis points. Amid fundamentals, you can see versus sentiment holding forth. Of course, for the 2029, previous top rate at 21%, we saw allotment closing in higher. And then, of course, the offer size of 60 billion for the 2031, investors bid were close to 400 times of what was offered to the market. Again, it demonstrates in terms of confidence, in terms of returns expectations amid other macroeconomic variables. If we look to the direction of what the government is saying, the Ministry of Finance is saying that yes, the budget deficit of 13 trillion, of course, will be financed deliberately with debt offer. So we expect that the market will also be so bullish as what we've experienced this year, since the government is also has also shown its position to say that this deficit of 13.1 trillion will be financed by debt. So the expectations are pretty. It's going to also be a very interesting time for the fixed income market next year as well.
Okay, so it's also interesting at this time that the AFDB, that's the African Development Bank, is holding meetings in Abuja right now, has launched the Debt Management Forum for Africa, DEMFA. The bank is proposing this as a platform for the continent to share their debt status and look at the challenges and also to reach a consensus on strategies to optimize debt and reduce costs. How do you see African countries playing into this or buying into this project and actually, getting transparent and also following the, finding a cap to, stopping borrowings and debt, getting that ceiling, not going above that debt ceiling that would probably be destructive for a country?
I think this is a deliberate step for Africa waking up to reality. This is a step in the right direction. It is one of the expectations for a pretty long time now. If we look at it, over 70% of Africa's publicly guaranteed debt are in US, denominated in USD, for instance. So this is a chase for Africa to deliberately move from a debt sustainability to a debt productivity model. It is without gainsaying to know that Africa must begin to demonstrate a model where this debt exposure would begin to have an appraisal of productivity rather than maintaining a stance of sustaining budget deficit through debt. Like I said, is a step in the right direction, but of course we will expect to see implementation at individual countries level.
Thank you so much, Dr. Oladipupo Tijani is the Group Chief Executive, First Icon Group. Thank you for joining us in Business Incorporated and sharing your perspective.
Thank you, Will.
Now, let's look at the Middle East now, where most major stock exchanges were in the red. Mostly in the red, just like Africa. Dubai, except Dubai, outlier there, up 0.94% at over 5,000 points there. And let's look at Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi is down at intraday 0.14%. Still within the region, we see Saudi Arabia in the red. That's the Tadawul exchange, 0.84% down. And the Qatari index is also down 0.1%. Let's look at Asia now, where stocks closed mixed today as investors are tracking Wall Street's uneven performance, and they're looking ahead to the U.S. Fed's key interest rate decision, which is started today. Now, Japan is struggled. It closed at 0.24%, still at 39,000. Now, the Kospi in South Korea, massively down 1.29%, and the Hang Seng in China is 0.48% down. And this is because markets stayed cautious after the reports that the Chinese leaders are planning to raise the country's budget deficit to 4% of GDP in the coming year, that's 2025, to keep growth around 5%. And this is despite the plans. You know, we're seeing that Hong Kong is slipping, as I mentioned, 0.48%. Let's look at mainland China's Shanghai index, how it fared at the close of business, 0.73% reaction to that news. You know, investors are probably wondering what's going to go on now. And then we're looking at the Nifty 50 in India, 1.39% down. But let's look at the U.S. markets now and see how they fared in early trade. I can tell you it's mostly in positive territory, but we see the Dow Jones slipping very quickly thereafter. You know, the winning streak they've been having. See the Dow Jones in the U.S. 0.25%, and they'll also see the S&P 500 futures 0.38% up, NASDAQ 1.24% up. Doing very well there, but you know, it's one of those things that happens in the market. You know, when the market goes up, it definitely has to come down. But they've been having a winning streak for a while now. It was one of their, but now they've had a losing streak, the 8th losing streak, especially for the Dow Jones. Tech stocks are beginning to drive gains in that in exchanges right now, the indexes. So we're going to be seeing more positives. Hopefully, the year runs, especially when the Fed is going to give the decision for the year. Ladi, how do you see index? Nvidia, had that a bit of a pullback. I don't know if we're going to see investors maybe taking advantage of that to probably buy the dip and come, get stock back
maybe some investors, because Nvidia had an incredible run, even though it's pulled back, quite a lot from that top. But it's been quite an interesting year for some indexes. New highs.
Of course.
New highs.
Of course.
Almost everywhere. At this point.
It's more like
in 2024.
they're going against the economy. The world is saying, oh, there's a downturn.
Regardless
and then
of the
indexes,
macro
the exchanges are just saying, oh no, we're going up.
Right.
It's more like going against the tide.
Yeah.
So how do you see the Fed, ruling tomorrow?
Yeah, well, definitely maybe 25 basis points at this point. But who knows? There might be some kind of surprise. But,
okay.
We'll find out at some point.
Of course.
Thank you so much, Will, there, for giving us most of the details of what's playing out with the markets we track. But let's take it on to the UK. Now, we have Juliana joining us. Great to have you, Juliana. So we see the UK government is set to offer compensation to post office capture victims. Give us a backstory about this.
Yeah, good afternoon, Laddie. I think all of our viewers in the UK will be familiar with the ongoing Post Office Horizon scandal. The inquiry has been going on for a couple of years now, and it's actually just concluding with closing statements. Now, it's been described as the greatest miscarriage of justice in British history, and that's because during, or shall I say, between the years of 1999 and 2015, a 40 Fujitsu Horizon accounting piece of infrastructure wrongfully accused about 900 post office workers of fraud, theft, and false accounting. In fact, during that period, many victims went to prison. Some, quite sadly, tragically, even committed suicide. And over the years, there's been a long-running battle between the victims and the Post Office, as well as the British government. Now, during that time, I think the government have paid out about £500 million to 3,300 victims. And as I said, there has been an ongoing inquiry. And during some of the testimonies that we've heard, which have been televised live at some points, more details have emerged about just how wrong the software was at the Post Office, which had predated the Horizon infrastructure. And that was this capture software, and that was used in the Post Office between 1992, before it was replaced by Fujitsu's Horizon system in 1999. And the government have quite notably this morning agreed that this capture system was also at fault, and they have now promised redress and justice to the victims. So I think for lots of individuals in the UK, this is really good news. Like I said, the Post Office Horizon scandal has been described as the greatest miscarriage of justice in British history. You can't get away from the coverage on the television. In fact, what brought this even more to light was a very popular ITV series called Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, Mr. Bates being one of the most vocal campaigners. But there are still so many questions for government. As I said, there's been hundreds of hours of testimony, and the case does still go on, the Horizon case, but now government have said they are going to compensate these capture victims. So I don't think this case is going anywhere fast soon.
Right. I guess we'll keep tracking that. Thank you for giving us the background there. But I guess we have some good data coming out of the UK. That's unemployment rates. That's steadied.
Yeah, that's right. Unemployment has come in for the 3 months to October, and it has remained steady at 4.3%, slightly higher, I suppose, than Rachel Reeves, Chancellor of the Exchequer, would like. But again, if you look at unemployment across the world, I think that's seen as a decent figure. I think within the data that the Office for National Statistics released this morning, I think economists have mostly focused on wage growth, which has picked up pace in the UK once again. This is wage growth excluding bonuses. It's up by an average of 5.2%, which does suggest that the labour market here in the UK remains quite tight. Some would interpret that as a good thing, but ahead of the final MPC gathering of the year on Thursday, Laddie, this is again a bit of headache for Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey, because the data, the modelling suggests that when there is higher wages, people have more money to spend, which means inflation ticks up, and inflation still lower than it was at the beginning of the year. But Rachel Reeves's budget has changed the trajectory slightly. So anybody that may be pricing in a rate cut on Thursday, I think this data today suggests otherwise.
Right. And how are the markets bracing for all of this?
The markets are in negative territory at the moment. I think a lot of city workers are looking at that unemployment data from the ONS this morning. The all-share, Laddie, is down 0.74%. The FTSE 100, the blue chip, that's down 0.80%. And the domestic market, the FTSE 250, that's down 0.94% at intraday.
All right. Thank you so much, Juliana. We'll get more details from you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Laddie.
All right, let's get a check on what's playing out in Europe now. See, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz did not survive the vote of confidence on Tuesday that triggers federal elections on February 23rd. Well, join us now for more. We have Chipona Chimbelu right there in Berlin. Good to have you, Chip. So what's next for Germany?
Thanks for having me. Well, Laddie, Chancellor Olaf Scholz got the result that he and pretty much everyone here in Germany expected. And now the federal president, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, has 21 days to make the decision on dissolving the parliament, to the German Bundestag. But we already know that he agreed to February 23rd as the date for the federal elections before the confidence vote was held. So it's pretty much procedural right now. Elections have to take place within the next 60 days, and February 23rd was agreed on by Chancellor Scholz and Friedrich Merz, the leader of the main opposition party, the Christian Democrats, mainly for logistical reasons. It will help the different parties in Germany to get their election programs and campaigns together. So Germany is expected to get into full swing election mode after the holidays in early January.
All right, which topics will dominate the election campaign?
Laddie, the economy is on the list as the top topic for most voters. Now, nearly half of Germans are concerned about their country's ailing economy, according to the latest Deutschland trend, which is a leading poll here. And many of them are also worried about their job security. Migration was in second place, but it was far behind economic concerns, with under a quarter of people saying it is a major problem. And the war in Ukraine was in third place. Now, these are the issues that Chancellor Scholz touched on when he addressed the German Bundestag ahead of the confidence vote on Monday. And he promised to raise the minimum wage and reduce sales tax on food items to help German voters struggling with costs here. And of course, the leader of the main opposition party, Friedrich Merz, is seen as most likely to become Germany's next chancellor. And on Monday, he delivered a scathing criticism of Chancellor Scholz's performance. He said that Scholz had failed and it was time for a change to reignite the German economy. Merz plans to lower income taxes for German workers and introduce incentives that allow people to work beyond retirement age to help add workers to Germany's shrinking working population.
All right, Chip, what can we expect from the markets today?
European stocks are expected to trade lower today amid more political uncertainty in its two biggest economies, Germany and France. Now, all the same, investors are keeping cool, at least for now. They are waiting for cues from this week's slate of central bank meetings. Now, those include the Bank of England, the US Federal Reserve, and the Bank of Japan. And of course, the main focus will be the US Central Bank. Traders will be looking out for clues on what might happen, of course, after the anticipated 0.25% rate cut this week. And they will also be keeping an eye on political drama elsewhere. Now, in Canada, Chrystia Freeland, the finance minister and deputy prime minister, resigned suddenly, and that leaves Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government under pressure. And in terms of economic indicators, U.S. retail sales figures and industrial production data are due later today.
All right, I got so much to look out for right there in markets in Europe. Thank you so much, Chip, there, for giving us the details. All right, let's get a quick check on what's playing out with other African countries that we track now. See the Egyptian House of Representatives, led by Speaker Hanafi El-Gabali, was approved presidential decree number 533 of 2023, which formalizes a framework agreement between the Egyptian government and the Abu Dhabi Exports Office, as ADEX, to finance wheat imports for Egypt's General Authority for Supply Commodities, that's GASC. Under the agreement, ADEX, an affiliate of the Abu Dhabi Fund for Development, will provide a $100 million annual revolving financing program over 5 years, amounting to a total of $500 million. And Zambia will immediately receive about 184 fund after the Lenders Board approved the fourth review of an extended credit facility. The disbursement of funds under a 38-month IMF-supported program follows a staff-level agreement reached between the Southern African nation and the fund last month, including the latest payments the nation has received, about $1.3 billion under the plan. All right, welcome back. So much happening in Nigeria's crypto industry, with the Securities and Exchange Commission amending rules on digital assets issuance, offering platforms, exchange, and custody. New rules at this point. Well, join us to unpack this. We have Segun Koshemani, is the CEO of Botme Cash, joining me right here in the studio. It's great to have you.
Good to have you too.
So,
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, a lot playing out in the market, and right there, if you see the screen, it's still green.
Absolutely.
It's still green on the screen.
Absolutely.
You know, at this point, looking at the market, XRP even going deeper, Bitcoin holding up 107,000.
We're going to 250.
I can imagine. And, you know, this kind of market is quite funny because it's when Bitcoin hits new levels like these that you get your grandma calling you. What's happening with Bitcoin? It's going up. You get somebody calling you from somewhere else. Oh, I want to get in now. Why is it always at this time? Why do they call at $16,000? Let's start with that before we go in.
Yeah, everybody gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve.
Right.
And Bitcoin is going up forever. Other fiat currencies debases. Bitcoin doesn't. It is deflationary, while other fiat currency, including our own almighty naira, backed by the almighty dollar, they are all inflationary currency. And people need to understand that Bitcoin solved something that has never been solved on God Almighty's universe before. It's called the double spend problem. Before now, before 2008, 2009, when the Bitcoin white paper surfaced, you could send digital value and keep a copy of it. So there is no way to measure authenticity with sincerity of purpose. There was never a way. Banking system is basically my XQL. So I can send something to you and, delete and edit and still have it. If I send you a picture before now, I can keep a copy of the picture. But Bitcoin solved that double spend problem. Now, if I send you a value, I can never ever keep that value again. That's what Bitcoin did, and that's the true blockchain. After that, few years after that is when you have every other thing cryptocurrency. So because Bitcoin is limited in the amount, they call it digital gold, but right. Unlike gold, it's only 21 million. Is scarce. The scarcity is finite. Right? It will go up forever. Unlike gold, that it's possible that you can still find gold. They found gold in El Salvador some days ago. Right. Anybody can find gold, and it's bloody to even mine gold. But Bitcoin basically has been created by a pseudonymous character called Satoshi Nakamoto. It's 21 million. You can go and check. Channels Television can hire the best people and go and check. Open source code base. It can never be more than that. So
right. But
about 60 million.
Some have argued that, since it's digital gold, but it doesn't make you jewelry like gold.
I mean, can you move $1 billion gold from here to the next
That'll be
place?
very heavy.
Yes, but I can move $10 billion worth of Bitcoin without nobody knowing. All I need to put is seed phrase or private keys. They are just set of names. If I know your name, Ladi, no Bola, no Kunle, I can keep my 12-word seed phrase. Right. It's the best way to keep money. Privacy is portable, is divisible, is fungible, and you can carry it along. If your house in Banana Island is worth $10 billion, if war breaks out in Nigeria, how can you take it away from there? But you can take
it in a flash drive.
Yes, and then for commercial trades, a lot of things that's making Bitcoin go up forever. The fact that it is finite, the fact that it is scarce, the fact that it doesn't debase like our regular dollar, pounds, naira,
right,
makes it go up, and other fiat currencies go down.
Quite a performance. But let's get into the nitty-gritty of this matter now. It's all about SEC bosses at this point. We see what's playing out in the U.S. With Gary Gensler giving way for a new SEC boss. Trump did promise that he would fire Gary Gensler.
Yeah,
so now it's all about...
He didn't get to do that, but Gary's leaving already.
Exactly. So now it's all about finding crypto-friendly Securities and Exchange Commission leaders, and it seems we found one in Nigeria.
Yes.
That's in the... with Omotimi Agama, but he set out some new rules now for virtual asset service providers. At this point, key introductions in a revised. That's for the revised rules. Issuers and issuance of digital securities, stable coins, cryptocurrencies, anonymity-enhanced cryptocurrencies prohibited in Nigeria. At some point, we're seeing some revised rules there. Advertisement, marketing, promotion, particularly social media influencers. We call them finfluencers. At this point, if you promote a cryptocurrency platform or token that does not have a license with the Securities and Exchange Commission in Nigeria, you would have to pay about 10 million.
Or you go to jail.
Or you go to jail, or both.
Yeah.
So is this friendly? Is this looking friendly?
I mean, I'll be frank. First of all, I want to thank President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for making a popular decision. Unlike outgoing Joe Biden, and Gary Gensler, who is unpopular in America, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu may have gotten some things right and wrong, but in this capital market, he got it 101% right by giving us Dr. Omotimi Agama. That's a Bitcoiner to the core and a virtual asset service friendly widely
But
experienced
does the
person.
SEC leader, do they have to be crypto-friendly, really?
The next financial space now and tomorrow is crypto. Your children, my 2-year-old daughter will get to 15 years old and ask you and I, Daddy, did you ever spend paper money? Like we are asking our parents, how did they marry you with cowries?
Right.
It's going to be true. No, Nigeria is trying to quit complete paper money. That's one of the ways you can curb money laundering and corruption at large. So the advantage of digital money is a lot. But with Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, the digital assets, you can really nip fraud in the bud. And what the SEC has done is laudable. Yes, things can be worked on. There are pros, there are cons, especially of the advertising. Let me touch on that. I'll start with the cons. The cons is food don't come out for the mouth of ordinary Nigerians. We be saying that they collect their own cho-cho. Like the everyday young Nigerian that would ordinarily just get influencers' money from abroad or from local companies would not be able to do that again. You do that, you might be liable to pay about 10 million naira, or you go to jail.
Because we go on Instagram and you see some of these influencers, promoting some crypto platforms,
which is very
and all of that.
which is very bad, So I particularly like this. I'll tell you why. If I pay 500 million or a billion naira to register myself with SEC, I go through the due diligence, rigorous due diligence. This SEC under Dr. Timmy is not playing. Our space is as big as the banks. We are ready to actually bring revenue in billions of dollars for Nigeria. So if you need to be on top of your game, you have to come out open. The Tony Elumelus, Segun Agbajes, the Jimovias, they came out open. So if we want to play like that, yes, you have to really be open to scrutiny. So the pros is no more come and perpetrate fraud, because a lot of popular influencers, I don't want to mention them just because I don't want to be the one to whistle-blow them, I've done this, and I'm sure the SEC is watching. I practically called out somebody that I'm his biggest fan, one of the biggest Afrobeat exports, who did that, who made a meme coin. So until these things are stopped, the proliferation of scams in our country will not stop. If somebody that has 5 million, 10 million followers, even as little as 30,000, 200,000 followers, will just collect money from one Oimbo and then, post something, gullible Nigerians will fall for it. Everybody's naira is inflationary, is debasing, so we're trying to automate our naira. You put in a lot of work, a lot of energy, you dissipate many of them on the road, traffic, and all of that, and then the little that you earn, you want to put it somewhere where it is going to rise in value, and then you put it in something that you don't understand. Because an influencer that you like, pushed it out there. And many of these influencers cash out at the expense of their followers. So it is...
Are those ones going to be recalled?
It's 100% right for the SEC to do whatever is right. I would not advocate for retrospect type of sanctions.
Right.
But if the SEC say that's what they're going to do, at least maybe they call you and say, you've made $2 million in retrospect. Are you going to come and talk about this or go to jail? It might make sense, but I think the SEC can forgive in the spirit of Nigeria and in the spirit of country, so we got to move forward. But it has to be stopped. I think one of the things I would like to recommend for the SEC is to reach out to all the social media companies, reach out to iOS platform, Google Play platform, or downloadable applications, and tell them, those are where the controls can really come from, and especially the social media influencers. So I'm a Bitcoin advocate, a Bitcoin maxi to the core, and I see how fraud has been perpetrated. I pay $1 billion naira for licensing. I go through all this due diligence, and then somebody on their social media is pushing whether a legit or illegit company. Do you think I'm going to be happy?
Right.
So
talking about most of these international platforms now, how does this rule apply to them?
Oh, beautiful. So I love what the SEC has done. You see, again, all the glory goes to the president, because that's a Lagos man with a Lagos mindset at the presidency. Then Dr. Timmy that he gave us has devised a way for us to grow, especially the young people here. A Binance competing with a Botany Cash is 10-0 in Nigeria. They have the liquidity, we have the technical capacity too, but who's going to give us a platform for expression? When all the money that I may have is maybe 100 million naira to run operations, to run marketing, and to expand, right? And Binance may just have about $40 million for marketing alone. How will I survive? That's how some people perpetrate fraud. So I love what the SEC is doing, ensuring that any foreign company that wants to come here, you must Nigerianize. 60% of your board, based on the updated rules, have to be Nigerian. That makes a lot of sense. You must have a Nigerian office. That's job opportunity, human capital development at its highest. If you don't like the sector that you're in, this is the best time for you to start thinking about the virtual asset sector. There is nothing so exciting in the banking sector no more. I used to build bank technologies, right? We built the United Bank of Africa Diaspora Banking application, so we know these things. It is more exciting in the blockchain space. And shout out to the SEC. They are the apex body for this capital market. We are the new entrants of the capital market.
Right.
So we don't want a situation whereby foreigners will come and then it won't be a fair playing ground. Although they are welcome, they're going to come with technology, they're going to come with capacity, but they should develop our own capacity, create jobs, be open to due diligence, and then the company should have local content directive.
And we have something, we're not importing, going forward.
I mean, there's a space for infrastructure to be outsourced. There's outsourcing there in the new SEC rules. You see, this new rules is really encompassing. I must give it to the SEC, right? Because some people don't have the capacity to build, but they have the money, so they can go and buy source codes, right? But then you have to subject that source code to SEC scrutiny, so we know what is there. Because Nigeria's sovereign money is what is on it. Unlike what the ex-governor of Central Bank did, Mr. Emefiele, this new Central Bank governor, Mr. Cardoso, recapitalizing the bank, the BDC, and the SEC, you can see what they are doing. It's really about local content.
All right, Segun, so much to unpack there, but I guess this is an ongoing conversation that will definitely, keep having to shed more light on what the SEC is doing with the crypto industry right here in Nigeria. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you very much,
Shehu Koseman is the Chief Executive Officer of Bought Me Cash. Thank you for coming on today. Alrighty, so that's the show. That's how major markets we track are looking. We'll give you more tomorrow. Thank you for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. Bye for now.